All right, well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our composting workshop in Mandarin. We have a Mandarin interpreter here, Philip. We answer as well.
那大家好，非常感谢大家今天来到我们这样一个关于堆肥的中文的一个信息介绍会。那么我是大家的中文翻译，然后同时呢，还有我们的各位主持，也叫 Anno，还有这边的其他的几位主持。
My name's Regina. I'm the Waste Education Officer at Whitehorse City Council, and I'll help facilitate this workshop today.
那么我的名字叫做 Regina， 那我是在 Whitehorse 这边的市委会相关的信息教育官员。那么今天呢，是由我负责去主持这样一场会议。
I would like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet on today and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
那么首先呢，我需要在今天会议开始的时候，向我们这一片土地传统的主人们去致敬。我希望向这片土地传统的所有者，他们的长老，现在以及未来去致敬。
Now to introduce our presenter, compost expert Ella Boyan, who will be teaching us about how to compost, what you can compost, how to care for your system, and how to use the end product to grow fresh food at home.
那么首先呢，这边是我们的堆肥的介绍专家，他叫安文霍尔克。那么他会为我们介绍一下关于如何去构建您的堆肥，以及如何去使用，以及最终的一个最终产品，你在家里面可以如何使用。
Thank you. Thanks for coming along on this beautiful sunny day. I will take you through 3 ER-SUN. I've learned some letters, some numbers. ER-SUN types of composting today. So we will get started by sharing my screen.
那么非常欢迎大家来到今天的分享会。今天是一个非常不错的天气。今天呢，我会给大家介绍1、2、3种不一样堆肥的方式。我给大家分享一下我的屏幕。
Now everybody is on mute. So if you need to unmute for some reason, please put a message in the chat.
那么目前呢，大家都是被静音的状态。如果你有任何原因希望把静音关掉的话，请您在旁边的聊天栏去打上这样的请求。
You can also put any questions that you have in the chat, and we will answer them at the end.
如果您有任何问题呢，您也可以在旁边的聊天栏里面进行提问，然后我们会在最后统一解答。
And we will provide the links and this recording after the presentation so that you can review it again.
那关于本次的一个展示相关的视频和链接，我们之后呢会有发给大家。这样呢，所以这样一个整个的分享会是被视频录制的，你可以之后回来再看一遍。
Thank you. So first of all, we will look at why food waste is a problem. Then we will look at the different compost systems to help you choose which system might suit you best. Then we will look at how to use it, as well as the rebates you can get from council, and we will follow up with questions.
那么今天呢，我们的整个展示分为5个部分。第一个部分是关于为什么食物的残渣或者食物的剩余会成为一个问题。第二个是如何去选择一个堆肥系统，那么哪一个是最适合您的。第3个呢是如何进行堆肥。第4个呢是关于 Whitehorse 的市委会对于当地的居民所提供的一个堆肥的补偿。还有最后呢，就是如果您有任何问题，我们会进行回答。
So food waste, there are 2 groups. There's avoidable food waste and unavoidable food waste. Avoidable food waste is something like an apple that is gone rotten because we just didn't get around to eating it. And unavoidable food waste is something like a banana peel, which there's always going to be a bit of leftover food from eating something like a banana.
那么食物的浪费呢，分为两种，一种是可以避免的食物浪费，还有一种是不可以避免的食物浪费。那么可以避免的食物浪费，举个例子，比如说家里面的苹果可能会腐烂掉了，那这种呢，可能就没有必要的去浪费了食物。那么另外一种呢，是不可以去避免的食物浪费，比如说呢，那你一个苹果，你把外面都吃掉了，中间的核呢，你是没有办法吃下去的。
A lot of resources go into growing, transporting, storing, and then selling food. So the less food we waste, the better it is.
那么很多食物呢，我们都要通过生产、去运输、去实际的分装以及去销售这样各个环节。我们在整个的流程当中呢，如果我们能越少的去浪费食物，这样呢，对于我们整体来讲都有更多的好处。
There are some good resources on Council's website to help you reduce food waste and to use your food leftovers as well as store food so that it lasts longer.
在我们市委会上的网站呢，有给您提供一些信息，是关于如何能够更好的去利用食物，减少食物的浪费，并且对于食物的残渣能够进行充分的利用，以及如何更好的储存食物，来避免食物的浪费。
Around about half of what we throw out in our rubbish bin is something that could have been composted.
我们在我们的食物残渣的垃圾箱里面所扔掉的食物的废料，差不多有一半都可以用于堆肥。
So, how do you choose a compost system?
那所以我们要如何去选择一个堆肥系统呢？
There are three main types we will look at today. E, compost bin, behind me. You can see on the screen here. R,
那么
a worm farm. See here. And sun, a fermentation system.
好，那么关于您可以选择的堆肥的系统呢，一共有3种。那么左边这第一种呢，是一个堆肥箱。那么第二个呢，是有这样一个通过蠕虫进行堆虫的一个设备。第3个呢，是如何通过您的堆肥进行一个发酵，去通过这样一个特殊设备去使它能够产生堆肥的效果。
So each system has a different strength and weakness. Different things can go in different systems.
那不同的系统呢，是有针对于不同的废料进行使用的，所以每一个呢都有相适用的食物的废料。
Compost bin or a compost heap is best for garden waste as well as food waste.
那第一个这个黑色的燃烧桶呢，它最适合用的是一些像花园里面所产生的废料和一些食物的残渣。
A worm farm is best for vegetable scraps and some fruit waste.
那么第二个这种呢，是最适合去处理水果和蔬菜的残渣。
A fermentation system known as a bokashi bucket that uses grain with enzymes to ferment your food waste is a little bit like Superman. It can take meat, dairy, science experiments from the back of the fridge. All food waste can go in a bokashi bin.
那么第3个这个发酵桶呢，它可以去处理一些谷物 或者是比如说米这样的东西，或者呢还有比如说它有点像一个超人，它还可以处理像肉、蛋白质、鱼这样的东西。
So when you are choosing a compost system, have a think about things like what food waste you have. Is it garden waste? Is it meat? Or is it vegetables?
所以当你在选择一个堆肥系统的时候呢，你需要去考虑你所产生的这些食物废料都是什么样的食物废料，是一些花园里面会产生的东西，还是水果蔬菜，还是肉类。
This fact sheet we will send to you as well, that's on the screen, so that you can visit it later.
那我们现在屏幕上面所打出这个信息册，我们之后会发给大家。那么所以呢，您可以不用着急记，之后会发给您。
Other things to consider are how much garden space do you have? Do you have a balcony or a large yard? Do you have a large lawn? And do you want to buy something off the shelf or make something at a budget rate?
那还有您需要考虑的因素就是您的花园有多大，您的家里面有没有阳台，有没有一个比较大的院子，有多大的草坪，以及您是想去买一个现成的设备，还是自己去进行做一个比较简单的设备。
And finally, it is really good to have a combination of systems. So having more than one system means you can cover all of your food waste at home.
另外呢，就是我们推荐您去使用多个系统，因为如果您使用了多个系统，就意味着您可以去处理家里面所有的食物废料。
Okay. So let's look at how they work.
好，那我们现在看一下他们是如何工作的。
First of all is where do you put your compost system?
首先呢，就是你把你的堆肥系统放在哪里？
A compost bin, shown behind me here, can go anywhere as long as it's sitting on soil.
那一个堆肥桶呢，也就是我身后的这个，它可以放在任何地方，只要是放在土壤上面就可以。
The idea with a compost system is as it composts, it gets very hot and creates steam.
那么这一个堆肥系统呢，我们所运用的原理就是在它堆肥的时候呢，它的里面的温度会上升到很高，这样会出现蒸汽。
A worm farm, on the other hand, will act like a hot car with your pet inside, so it needs to be kept cool and in the shade. The worms are comfortable at the same temperature that we are comfortable.
那么第二个这个系统呢，它就好像是在太阳光下的一个车一样。那么这个时候呢，这个系统需要呢放在一个比较阴凉的地方，因为呢，如果说把它的系统放在阳光下直射的话，它的温度会非常高。那里面呢，它其实这个系统里面是通过蠕虫进行工作的。那这个蠕虫呢，它所处的最舒适的温度是跟我们人体所处的这个舒适温度是差不多的。
And a bokashi bin can be kept indoors or out. Again, it needs to be around room temperature that we are comfortable for the enzymes to grow.
那么最后一个系统呢，这个 Baka 系统，它也是可以放在任何地方，它可以放室内、室外都一样。那么仍然呢，它的这里面的工作原理需要保持在跟我们人体所感到舒适的温度差不多的温度，才能够达到最好的堆肥效果。
What do you get out of each system? You
所以
get, oh, sorry. You go.
那通过每一个系统，您都可以获得什么东西呢？
A compost system will produce beautiful, rich soil.
第一个这个燃烧系统可以给你非常肥力丰厚的土壤。
A worm farm will produce beautiful, rich soil known as worm castings or worm poo, as well as liquid.
那么第二个，这个通过蠕虫去发酵的一个堆肥桶呢，它会给你提供一种非常肥沃的，有时候我们叫它虫屎，或者是会形成液体的这样的堆肥的产品。
And a bokashi bin will produce both a solid waste that, as you can see from the photo, is kind of like a cold, smelly casserole, as well as liquid.
那么关于最后一个堆肥桶呢，你可以看到它也会给你提供这种照片里面呢所显示的一些固态的一个堆肥的产品，还有呢液态的堆肥的产品。
And the liquid that comes out of bokashi is very, very potent. It's very rich, so you need to water it down a lot.
那么第三个这个 bokashi 桶所产生的这个液体的产品，它非常的浓，所以说呢，需要用水稀释之后才能够使用。
I'll run you through now a worm farm and the different layers to begin.
那么首先呢，我们先来讲一下关于这样一个蠕虫农场，它的不同的一个层里面都是什么东西和原理。
A worm farm starts with a drainage tray to collect the liquid.
那么首先呢，最下面这层是一个滤水的层，那么它是去收集所有的液体的。
Next, there are 3 trays that the worms will live in.
然后接下来呢是3层，让这些蠕虫去生活的地方。
Always put the worms in the first tray.
请记得一直要把蠕虫放在第一个盘子里面。
And then you put your other trays on top, empty.
然后第二个层呢放上去之后呢，第二个托盘里面是要空的，保持。
When you need to add food, lift up the top 2 trays to add it to where the worms are.
当你需要往里面加食物的时候，记得要把上面2个托盘都拿起来，然后呢，把食物加到那些蠕虫所在的地方。
And when that tray is full, start adding to the next tray above.
那当这一个托盘满了以后呢，我们开始往它上面那个托盘去加。
Eventually, all the trays will be full.
那最终呢，所有的这些托盘都会装满。
That's when you empty tray E into the vegetable garden and it becomes sansu. So vegetable garden and then put it on top and they're in a new order.
那么当所有的都满了之后，当你需要去使用这个产品的时候，你要先拿下面那个最开始放进去的1号托盘，把里面呢可以放到您的蔬菜花园里面，然后当把里面的产品清空之后，把清空的这一个托盘放到所有的托盘上面。
I'll show you what it looks like inside.
我会给你展示一下正里面长什么样子。
See, it looks like beautiful, rich soil.
它们都是看起来非常肥沃的土壤。
The worms will move up to the top tray to eat the food. so that you can empty out the lower trays.
那这些蠕虫呢，会自己往上爬，去爬到最上面的托盘来去吃它自己所需要的养分，所以下面的呢，你就可以使用了这个土壤。
Okay, sorry, that view should be better. I will share my screen again.
好，然后我再分享一下我的屏幕。
Some worm farms, you will put Hessian blanket on top. That's just insulation to keep the moisture in.
对于有一些系统呢，我们会放一个去隔锁水分的毯子在上面，这样能够确保把水分隔在外面。
However, you can just use a pizza box or some other cardboard.
当然，你也可以就用一张纸壳或者什么东西去隔一下。
Another type of worm farm that needs less maintenance is an in-ground worm farm.
还有一种堆肥系统呢，是它可以去嵌入到地下面的一个堆肥系统。
In this one, this is a budget one that you dig a hole and you just have the top bit sticking out above the ground.
那这个呢，就是一个比较便宜的这样一个系统。那我们上面呢会挖几个洞，然后呢把它去插入到地下面，它只有上面的这个设备的头部这一个部分是露在地上面的。
The benefit of that is you can keep it in your vegetable garden and the nutrients are freely flowing into your vegetables.
那这个东西的好处呢，是这样一个设备可以就放在您的蔬菜花园里面，然后可以让它里面的养分自由的在您的蔬菜花园里面去流动。
Another benefit is because worms like it cool, they can escape a hot summer day. They can dig down and stay alive.
他说这个东西还有一个好处呢，是如果夏天遇到了特别热的天气，那这些蠕虫呢，它可以自己去爬到地底下比较深的地方，这样呢，它能在比较炎热的天气自己找办法活下来。
Another example is a large one. I'll bring it closer so you can see it. This one's called a subpod, which is a larger version of the in-ground farm.
那么这边我后面呢还可以展示一个，这个是一个更大的版本的那个嵌入到地底下的那种嵌入地里面的，就嵌入式的这种蔬菜的一个堆肥系统。
This one sits inside a raised garden bed. So you would have your vegetables growing all around the outside, and then you can sit on the top.
那这个东西呢，就是把它要更大一些，把它嵌入到地底下面进行堆肥，然后周围呢可以都种上蔬菜，然后您可以坐在这个东西上面。
And instead of Hessian, it has insulation in the lid.
那这个东西呢，也不需要去进行过滤，因为它自己这里面呢是有绝缘层的。
You can even make your own from a bucket, a food grade bucket with holes drilled in it.
你自己呢也可以找一个食物桶或者什么样的桶，自己去在上面钻洞，自己做一个。
So we're going to look now at how to feed and look after each system.
好，接下来我们会看一下如何向每一个系统里面添加食物和进行维护。
The first part of looking after the system, we use an acronym ADAM, which stands for Aliveness, Diversity, Air, and Moisture.
那第一个呢，我们在去维护这个系统里面所提到的词叫做 ADAM， 我们用缩写，分别代表4个字母 A， 也就是活 ，D 就是多种 ，A 代表氧气，以及 M 代表水分。
I hope I've used the right characters.
那他希望他用的这几个字是正确的。
So aliveness relates to all the bugs and worms and flies and spiders.
那活的呢，指的是各种活的昆虫和蠕虫，这里面可以包括蚯蚓，像一些昆虫，以及像蚂蚁和蜘蛛。
In both a compost bin and in a worm farm, you will see lots of living creatures, which are all part of the composting process.
那在您接触到这样一个堆肥系统的时候呢，您会发现里面可能涉及到一些活体的虫子。那这些活体的虫子呢，都是这样一个堆肥的过程的一部分。
In a bokashi system, you can't actually see the life in there, except maybe a white mold. It is cultures such as lactobacillus and yeast. So microflora is if that's an easy word to translate, microscopic plant life breaking it all down.
I'm sorry, could you please explain that a little bit?
Yes. So enzymes such as yeast and what's in yogurt culture, so a bit like yogurt, it all ferments the food in the bucket, so you can't actually see it.
Yep. 那么对于第三个这样一个 bakaki 桶呢，那这个里面所使用的并不是这些活体可见的虫子，而是它使用的是像微生物以及像酸奶里面的益生菌这样的东西去分解里面的食物残渣。
So they are all living systems, but some you can see, some you can't.
那所以呢，其实每一个系统里面都有活物去参与这样一个过程，但有些活物是您能看到的，有些是您看不到的。
Diversity means putting lots of different things into your compost system.
那么多种多样性是指我们要把各种各样不同的东西都要加入您的这样一个堆肥系统里面。
If you were to just put in watermelons and nothing else, your system would be sloppy and slush and wet.
如果说呢，举个例子，如果您只放西瓜这一种东西放到您的堆肥系统里面，这个效果并不会好，它会变得非常潮湿。
If you were to just put in cardboard, it wouldn't break down.
如果您只是放入硬纸板，它并不会分解。
Mixing them together is what makes the magic happen.
我们需要把不同的东西放在一起，混起来放进去，这样呢才会有非常奇特的效果。
And even pet poo can go in some compost systems.
甚至呢，在某一些堆肥系统里面，你还可以把宠物的大便放到里面。
We break the food waste or ingredients into two main categories.
那我们主要把这些堆肥的原料呢，分为两种不同的类别。
Our brown category is for our carbon-rich things like cardboard, eggshells, paper.
那么对于我们左上角这个棕色的部分这一类呢，我们指的主要是富含碳的这些东西，比如说像硬纸板，比如说像书报，或者是其他的富含碳的东西。
These ingredients are usually dry and they're usually alkaline.
那这些原料呢，一般都会比较干燥。
Our other category is green. This is mostly your fruit and vegetable waste.
那么另外一个类别呢，是绿色的这个类别，它里面会包含您的很多食物，包括水果和蔬菜的残渣。
these ingredients are usually quite wet and they're more acidic than the brown ingredients.
那么这些残渣呢，一般都要更加湿润一点，并且呢，酸性要更强。
A good combination of the two would be approximately 1/3 browns and 2/3 greens.
一个比较好的搭配比例呢，就是棕色的这一部分东西放1/3，绿色的这一部分东西呢放2/3。
If your compost system is a bit wet and smelly, then add more browns.
如果说你的堆肥系统显得比较湿，并且有点出味道，这个时候你要加更多的棕色的那部分东西进去。
And if your compost system is quite dry and slow, add more greens.
那如果说你的堆肥系统比较慢，并且比较干燥，那你要加更多绿色部分的东西进去。
Continue to tweak the ratio to get your system perfect.
你要不断的去调整你的系统里面两种不同的废料所占的比例，来确保你的系统能够达到最高效的工作的一个环境。
Next is air. I'll unshare my screen so that I can demonstrate how to aerate your system.
那么下一部分是关于氧气。那么我会先把我的屏幕分享关掉，来给大家展示一下关于氧气。
A good tool to use is a corkscrew or compost aerator.
那么这个呢，就是一个堆肥所用的工具。那这个呢，是一个很好的您可以用上的工具。
All you need to do is wind that down and pull it up and wind it down and pull it up to get air, oxygen, nice and deep into your compost.
那您需要做的就是拿这个工具去从上面把土通到下面，提起来，再从上面推到下面。它的工作原理就是能让氧气很好的能够进入到土壤的各个层级。
The same works for a worm farm.
对于一个蠕虫工厂来说，也是一样的。
A large in-ground worm farm, you would do the same as composting.
那这一个呢，你也是把它拽下去，就做跟之前的那个燃烧桶一样的事情。
And a small worm farm, I would wear gloves.
那对于这样一个比较就是上面有各个层堆着的这个小的系统，那么我们需要戴上手套。
And fluff it up to get the air down into it.
那用手呢去翻起土壤，这样能够确保氧气能够进到里面去。
A bokashi bin, on the other hand, is fully sealed and does not need oxygen.
那么 bokashi 这种桶呢，那它是完全密封的，所以它不需要氧气。
What you will get in a bokashi bin is a smell a little bit like apple cider vinegar.
那么在 bokashi 桶里面呢，你所闻到的味道呢，有点像苹果醋。
In your worm farm and your compost bin, there should be no smell at all.
在燃烧桶里面和那个蠕虫工厂里面，你应该是闻不到任何味道的。
And that's because of the oxygen.
是因为里面有通氧气。
Moisture.
下面关于水分，
I will show you. This is worm castings or compost.
那这个呢，就是一个蠕虫所帮助去堆肥的土壤。
You should be able to squeeze it into a ball and it will hold its shape, but not have water dripping out.
那你应该可以用手去把它堆成这样一个像球一样的东西，不应该有水流出来。
If it just crumbles, it's too dry.
如果说呢，它们太松散了，粘不起来，说明它太干了。
And if water is dripping out, it's too wet and it will lose oxygen and start to smell.
那么如果说呢，你在去捏合它们的时候会挤出水分，说明它太湿了，而且会产生味道。
So if your worm farm smells or your compost bin, it is usually because it is too wet and not enough oxygen.
所以说呢，如果说你的这个蠕虫工厂或者是燃烧桶，它们如果出了味道的话，那么通常是因为它们太湿润了，以及呢没有足够的氧气。
In a bokashi bin, it's okay to be really wet.
而 bokashi bin 呢，如果它非常湿的话也没有关系。
So your pot of tea with tea leaves, you can tip the whole lot in.
那如果说呢，你煮完一杯茶，煮完一壶茶，你可以直接把那些湿的茶叶就直接放到这里面。
That fills all the air pockets and allows all those beautiful microorganisms to grow.
它们呢可以很好的让所有的这些里面的微生物在里面成长。
And as I mentioned earlier, you can compost dog poo as long as the dog hasn't just been wormed.
Sorry, could you say that again, please?
Yes, you can compost your dog poo as long as the dog hasn't just had the worming tablets, the worming medicine.
也他说对于您的宠物的粪便呢，它是可以用来去堆肥的。只有当你的宠物刚刚做完除虫以后的那个时候的粪便是不可以用来堆肥的。
Troubleshooting.
下面是出现问题如何解决。
Some useful tools to have are things like garden lime or ash from the fireplace.
Sorry, what is garden lime? Could you explain that? a little bit?
Garden lime is like crushed up limestone. It's very alkaline. It's a white powder. And you buy it where you buy fertilizers and things from the hardware store.
OK， 那他说呢，在这个系统里面比较有用的两种东西，一种是比如说外面有一个篝火，它底下焚化的灰，还有另外一种东西呢，您可以去一些商店里面找到，它叫 garden lime， 您可以看一下是 LIME， 有专门的这种东西。
These help manage the acidity from your fruits and vegetables.
So these help to manage
Your acidity.
Yep， 这些东西呢会帮助您去调节您的这一个堆肥系统里面的酸度。
All you need is a sprinkle like salt and pepper on your dinner.
那么你唯一需要的就是一个喷洒器，就像是在你平时吃饭的时候，餐桌上去撒盐、撒胡椒粉的那个东西。
Other useful ingredients for troubleshooting are cardboard, my favorite.
还有一些其他可以用来解决一些出现的问题的工具，就包括硬纸板，也是我最喜欢的工具。
Cardboard can soak up the moisture if it's too wet, or you can add wet cardboard to your compost system if your system is too dry.
如果你的系统太湿了呢，你可以加一些干燥的硬纸板。如果说呢，你的 整个系统太干了的话，你可以加一些湿润的硬纸板。
You can also add blood and bone or horse poo or even this comfrey plant here. Whoops. This comfrey plant here to help speed up your compost.
Could you please spell that the name of that plant to me?
Comfrey, yes, I couldn't find a direct translation. Comfrey. It's an old-fashioned herb, very rich in nutrients.
Yep, and could you explain a little bit what that blood and bone would be?
Blood and bone is a high-protein fertilizer. Yep, and a bit like dynamic lifter, people might be familiar with.
Got it. 那他说还有一些其他可以用上的东西呢，包括下面那一行的1、3、4这个东西。第一个东西呢叫做 comfrey， 这个东西呢是一个紫草科的植物，那么您可以在澳洲当地去寻找一下。还有下面那行的第3个东西叫做 blood and bone， 您去找这个商品。这个商品呢，它是一种高养料的肥料。还有最后一个呢，就是马的粪便。
To make it easy, you can buy pre-made smaller containers rather than all these other things.
他说，如果说呢，你想让整个的这个过程呢变得更容易一些，你可以买那种有小的密封包装的，它提前有混好的，这样您就不用把上面所有东西都买了，自己混了。
However, if you manage your ratio of greens and browns and manage your oxygen and water, then you shouldn't need to troubleshoot.
然而呢，如果你能够维持一个比较好的绿色的那些原料和棕色的原料之间的配比，如果你能确保里面的水分适度以及里面有充足的氧气，那么这样呢，您就不用担心要去解决这些问题。
So those troubleshooting ingredients are to help with issues such as smells, mosquitoes, or even mold.
那么这些所有用来去解决问题的东西呢，主要就是为了去解决，如果说这个堆肥桶味道不好，或者如果有蚊子飞过来，或者是如果出现发霉的状况，去解决这些问题的。
If you have mice in your compost, they don't like it wet and they don't like you disturbing their house. So you can turn it regularly and keep it wet and they will move on.
他说，如果说呢，你这附近呢出现了老鼠，那您可以保持这个堆肥桶是保持湿润的，这样呢，它们就不会过来打扰你的堆肥桶了，因为它们不喜欢潮湿的环境。
To keep your worms alive in summer, in a worm farm, you can freeze your food scraps in the freezer the day before.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
Yeah, to keep your worms alive in summer, you can freeze your food scraps. So pop them in the freezer, so they're going in frozen.
OK， 他说在夏天的时候呢，为了保持您的蠕虫桶里面的蠕虫是活着的，那您可以在把食物的残渣放到堆肥桶里面之前，先把它放到冰箱里面，把它制冷一下，然后再放到堆肥桶里面。
So now we will look at how to get your compost out and use it in the garden.
现在呢，我们来看一下如何去使用你的堆肥的产品，用在你的花园里面。
Compost is easy. You can either lift the door.
Oh, I think we've frozen there.
Oh.
The question we've got is, where can I get the worms?
Yep. Ella, are you able to hear that now? Okay, great.
I am. I've just changed networks. It's not as good signal, but it's probably a more reliable network. So, yeah, fingers crossed that helps.
All right, well, over to you then again.
No problems. I will just answer the question about worms that I just heard the tail end of. You can buy worms through most garden centres and hardware stores. We sell worms at Compost Community, or you might be able to find a local worm farmer near you. So if you look on the internet for compost worms.
他说，那关于去堆肥所用的蠕虫，您可以在当地的一些硬件或者是工具商店里面买到，您也可以到 Compost Community， 他们这边也有卖。还有，您也可以在互联网上去搜索发酵堆肥用的蠕虫，那么你也可以找到如何购买。
I'll come back to the other questions at the end. I'll just show you these, the harvesting of systems, and then I'll go to where there's a stronger internet signal when we do question time.
那他说呢，我们先把所有的东西讲完，然后我们一起回答问题。等我都讲完之后，他会去换一个更加稳定的互联网，然后我们会继续回答问题。
So to harvest your compost, you can either lift the side flap and dig it out, or the easiest way, wiggle, 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 lift, move it to the next spot, shovel half in, and you're left with some beautiful compost.
他说，对于这样一个燃烧桶呢，您可以选择把它侧下面的盖子打开，把下面的土壤去堆肥好的土壤挖出来，或者呢，你也可以把整个堆肥桶把它抬起来，放到另外一个地方。那么原来堆肥桶所在的位置会出现一堆土壤，你把上面的那些土壤呢放回堆肥桶里面，下面的土壤就可以使用了。
To harvest your worm castings, simply find the tray that doesn't have many worms in it and tip it into the veggie patch.
对于这个蠕虫工厂里面的土壤呢，你找到其中有一层没有什么蠕虫的这样一个层的土壤，直接把这个土壤倒到你的花园里就可以。
To harvest the liquid from your worm farm, I use a container under the tap and I leave the tap open. So I just empty it every now and again.
那对于这样一个桶里面的液体呢，你可以用一个杯子或者什么一样的东西去接，这个下面会有一个类似于水龙头一样的东西。那我呢习惯于就把水龙头一直开着，然后我就放一个杯子在下面，我差不多每个小时过来收集一次。
To harvest your bokashi, there's a tap to the liquid and you put that in a watering can and water it down.
那么对于 bokashi 这种桶呢，你把下面那个水龙头打开，然后用杯子也好什么东西去接那个液体，然后记得这个液体呢很浓，所以你要把它去稀释之后再去使用。
And to harvest the solids, you dig a hole in the garden and tip it in and then cover it over.
那么使用这类土壤的时候呢，你先在自己的花园里面挖一个坑，然后呢把这里面的土壤倒进去，再用其他表层土壤把这些土壤埋起来盖下去。
If that's too much work, it is for me. You can empty it straight into your compost bin.
他说，如果说呢，你觉得这个过程太麻烦了的话，或者工作太繁琐，对我来说就比较繁琐，你可以直接把这类的土壤直接倒到你的堆肥桶里就可以。
We're now going to look at Whitehorse compost rebates before we go into question time.
好，那在我们去回答问题之前，我们再来看一下关于 Whitehorse 这个市委会对于堆肥的一个补助。
So through council, if you keep your receipt for your compost system, you can claim back $50 if you're a household, or if you're a business education provider like a school or a community group, you can claim back $150.
那通过市委会呢，如果您留好在您购买堆肥系统的时候所产生的发票，那么您可以去通过12个月内向 Council 去把这笔钱获得一个补贴。那么对于每个家庭来讲，是可以获得50澳元的补贴。对于一些公司或者是像教育的提供商，比如说像学校或者是社区团体来讲，可以获得150澳元。
You can download the form from Council's website to send in with your receipt.
您可以通过市委会的网站去下载这张表格，然后呢，去把您的发票和表格一起发过来。
And there's lots more information on that same page to help you with your compost and food waste.
那在政府的这一个网站上面，您还可以找到很多的关于堆肥和处理您的食物残渣相关的信息。
Regina, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, you've pretty much covered it almost. So we have translated fact sheets on our website. I've also included the links in the chat as well.
Great, thank you. Some resources that will help you as well is Council's website, as we just saw.
那么刚刚 Regina 说呢，他们这边网站上还有已经翻译好的中文信息可以供大家看，然后这边呢是提供了这边市委会的网站。
Sustainability Victoria has lots of good information.
第二个是关于维多利亚州的可持续发展网站。
And my website, you can translate into simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese as well using the Google Translate button for all of this information.
那最下面的呢是我们这一个团体的网站，那您可以通过 Google Translate， 也就谷歌翻译的方式，去把整个网站翻译成中文。
So now we have some time for questions, and we also have a little evaluation poll. So that I don't forget the poll, I might pop the poll up first, then we'll visit questions.
他说，那我们这边呢，现在开始回答大家的问题，以及呢，这里还有一个关于今天的信息会，希望大家能做出一个评价。然后我们先把这个评价表拿出来，因为怕忘了，所以让大家先做一个评价。
So I'll pop up the poll. It's nice and easy. This is our evaluation. And simply, would you recommend this workshop to a friend?
那么这个呢，就是一个很简单的一个评价。那么大家去做一个调查，那么您是否会推荐这样一个分享会给你的朋友？ Yes 就是是 ，No 就是不是。
While everyone answers that, I'll just give you a moment and I will move to slightly better internet reception to answer everyone's questions.
那大家先回答一下这个问题，然后呢，那我会去换一个网络比较稳定的地方，然后去回答大家所有的问题。
In the meantime, please type your questions into the chat.
同时呢，如果大家有任何问题，请大家输入到右边的聊天栏里面。
Those that have answered no, they wouldn't recommend it. If you would like to give us some feedback on how we could improve in the comments or email to Regina separately, that would be great.
对于那些投票说不会推荐给你的朋友的人，请你们，如果你们可以的话，可以在右边的聊天栏里面去输入一下为什么你们觉得不会推荐， 或者你可以给 Regina 去发电子邮件。
Okay, I'll leave the poll open, but you can just minimize it from your screen by pressing the little minus symbol.
那么我会把这个调查就放在这里，然后您可以点那一个让它最小化的按钮，可以把这个窗口最小化。
Great. So Philip, could you please assist with translating a couple of the questions? So we've already done the one from Flora regarding the worms and where to purchase them, but just the next two would be great, please.
Yep. The second question is, for the different kinds of food waste that I have, can I put them together and compost them together?
Depending on what types of food waste, you can compost almost any food waste, but if you're putting meat in a compost bin, you may run into trouble. It's best to bokashi that. If the person could clarify.
Yep. 他说，那不同的食物残渣呢，原料可能可以放到一起去堆肥，但是比如说，如果你有肉的话，那么根据我们之前讲解的内容，肉最好不要放到一个燃烧桶里面去堆肥。那么像肉这种东西，最好要放到还是 bokashi 桶里面进行堆肥。Would you like me to read the next question?
Yes, please.
The next question is that, where can I buy a storage bin? I think, I'll just ask, what does this client mean by storage bin? 请问王发科，您说的储存桶是指什么呢？ I think we'll go back to the question later.
Okay.
I'm not too sure what that storage bin means.
Sure.
The next question is, how fast do worms grow? I've had a worm farm for a month.
Okay. Worms will double their population every 3 months.
那么所有的这些蠕虫呢，每3个月它的数量就会上升1倍。
You can calculate how many worms you'll have over a period of time by working out their weight, the food weight, and time.
你可以去计算和测量一下，那么这个桶有多重，那么你放进去的食物残渣有多重，然后呢还有时间，去综合考虑各个因素，可以去计算一下现在里面有多少蠕虫啊。
1,000 worms weighs around about 250 grams, and they will eat half their body weight in a day, which is 125 grams.
对于250克的蠕虫来讲，这差不多有1000只，也就1000只蠕虫的重量差不多是250克。那它们一天就可以吃掉自己体重1半的食物残渣。
There is on our website a kids maths sheet, which is great for adults, on calculating how big your population will get over a period of time.
在我们的网站上呢，有一个数学计算的一个纸，您可以去看一下，它会帮助您去计算您已经有多少蠕虫了。
Okay, next question.
Next question is, what type of compost bin do you recommend?
It depends on what you like. I like any solid bin that sits on the ground because nature helps.
这个取决于你喜欢哪一种。我比较喜欢那种可以一个桶直接放到土地上的那种，因为我觉得这个可以利用大自然的能量。
Try to get one that's either solid, known as a Getty bin, round, which you can get at hardware stores, or one that screws together, not one that snaps together because they break.
您可以找一个比较坚固的，然后呢，有在一些硬件商店里面叫做 Getty bin 的这一种的，就不要找那种松松垮垮的，要找一个比较坚固一点的。
If you're a larger household, you may prefer a tumbler, but they can be a little bit more work.
那么如果说你的家庭比较大的话，你可以买一个 tumbler 这种桶。那这个呢，可能需要的工作做的工作也要更多一些。
Next question.
Next question is, what is the main differences? What are the main differences between the first type and the second type? Apart from the fact that they, they take different food waste.
So the first type, a compost bin, is a hot system. It will heat up, get hot, and release steam. That's ideal. It often won't happen. It's a larger system, so it can take a larger volume. A worm farm is a more refined system. It's faster, but it has to be kept cool.
那么第一个这个系统呢，它会更热一些，并且它会产生蒸汽啊。如果理想的情况下，那么它能够去处理的食物分量要更多一些。但是呢，你需要保持它是比较热的。那么后面的那个系统呢，那么它是第一个不用保持比较热的，它就正常就可以了。第二个系统呢，是一个蠕虫的工厂的那个，这一个呢更快一些，但是你需要保持这一个处于凉爽的阴凉的地方才可以。第一个随便。
And Philip, if you could also ask people if we haven't been clear in our answer or answered their question properly, they could ask it again in another way.
如果说我们回答了哪个问题，如果回答您觉得还有其他疑问，或者是觉得我们并没有讲清楚的话，您还可以再换一种方式再问一次。
Okay, next question.
Sorry, I'll need a little bit dictionary help. Just 1 second.
While you're looking that up, I'll just show people the cardboard that's really good is the one with these corrugations.
那么，对，在我去看这个问题的同时呢，那他去给大家展示一下，像这种有一个一个小槽子、小凹槽的这种硬纸板是最好的。Yep. The next question is that, can I burn plants myself to create some plant ash?
If you were to burn plants yourself, you would need to dry them first so that they burn rather than smolder, which creates a lot of pollution. So you would first need to dry them.
那么如果你想自己去烧草木的话，那你要确保你要的草木要足够干燥，这样的时候呢，它在燃烧的时候才不会产生污染气体、污染大气。
There may also be some restrictions on burning. Each council area has certain restrictions, so check that first.
那么在你去点燃一些东西或者燃烧草木的时候，不同的市委会也有不同的规定，有些市委会可能会限制您去燃烧任何东西。
Another option is soaking those plants in a bucket of water and fermenting them to make liquid for your garden.
还有一种方法呢，就是把一些植物去泡到液体里面，通过让它们发酵的方式去制作一个液体的一个花园。The next question is, so this kind just answered my previous question about the storage bin. So he actually means combustion bin. So where can I buy a combustion bin?
They're illegal now. That's an incinerator, no longer allowed. They're very polluting.
I'm sorry, he means the compost bin, so the first bin. Where can you buy
compost, sorry, I thought you said combustion.
Yeah, sorry,
Compost bin.
Combustion, my bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that compost bin you can buy at your local hardware store, garden centre, through us and other organisations like us, Regina has put a list in the chat of various places to buy them.
也不好意思，这个是一个堆肥桶，那您可以在家附近的一些商店啊、硬件商店啊，他们都可以买到。那 Regina 呢，在聊天栏里面有放一个链接，您可以看到上面有告诉您在哪里可以买到。The next question, if there are any chemical glues or some other chemicals stick to the cardboards, then in those kind of scenarios, can I use those cardboards for compost?
It comes down a little bit to personal opinion on how organic. I like to only use the brown cardboard. There's sticky tape is plastic, but I just pull that out. And then there's colourful cardboard. I don't, because there's a lot of plastics.
这个取决于您对于自己的堆肥所产生的肥料的有机程度要求有多高。那么，比如说我个人来讲的话，我不会用那样的东西，我只会用这种棕色的纸板。比如说我给你展示的第一个棕色的盒子上面有胶带，我会把胶带撕下来再用。对于有一些我第二给你展示那些白色的或者彩色的硬纸板，我不会用它，因为上面有很多染料以及很多塑料。The next question is, for the compost products, are they more suitable for planting flowers or planting vegetables?
Both. Planting vegetables, if you have vegetables that you want leafy growth, the high nitrogen content helps. But if you compost a lot of, say, banana peels, the high potassium helps with flowering. So good for both.
他说两个都适合。那么比如说你要种蔬菜的话，这里面的甲烷和氢会帮助蔬菜的成长。如果你要去种花的话，这里面的养分有一些养分也适合花的成长，所以都适合。The next question is, could you send us in writing of the mechanism of each system again? Because there are some details in how each system works that I still don't understand.
Yes, can you just repeat that question for me, specifically what they wanted?
Yes. So could you send us in writing how each system works again?
Yes. I will make a note here. I'll just put note to self, fact sheet on how each system works. And I will include that.
Yes, and the next question is that what are the current rules on burning tree leaves and weeds?
I don't believe that you can on a suburban block, but it depends where you live. Most areas there's a minimum land size and you need to apply for a permit. But even then you can still only burn dry matter. So check with your local council, which is probably mostly Whitehorse for you all, but unlikely that you can burn off. However, if you have a small backyard barbecue or something like that and you're burning a small amount just to make an ash, that may be allowed, but just check with your local area.
他说这一个问题呢，如果你是住在墨尔本的郊区的话，那可能不太容易获得许可让您去燃烧这些东西。具体呢，您要到您当地的您所居住的市政会那边去了解。那么如果是允许呢，也一定会让您把它弄得非常的干燥，并且只是家里面为了制造灰等等东西去小范围的去燃烧。 不太可能大范围燃烧。但最终呢，您还是要向您当地的市委会去咨询。我相信大家应该都是住在 Whitehorse。The next question is. So I've bought some liquid at Bunnings, which help to fermentate. Can I show you what it is?
Yes.
I'm just wanting to know, are they actually worms or what are these things used for?
Okay. I'll just expand my view so I can see.
Yeah, this question came from Flora.
Flora. Yes. Yes, I know the one. It's okay, that liquid, but it has a really long shelf life, so it loses effectiveness. You can make it fresh yourself with fermented molasses.
Sorry, could you spell molasses for me?
Molasses, Malasses. It's the black liquid sugar that licorice is made from. Sort of, not quite.
Sorry,
Like
didn't find the word. Could you spell that again?
Yeah, so it's a sugar syrup from sugar cane. Malasses. I think. Could be AS. Molasses. ES.
Okay. I couldn't find either one, but I can explain it to.
Yeah, so you can use any fermenting type material or liquid.
他说您那个可以用，还可以。那么它呢，因为它在货架上能够储存的时间比较长，所以它的效果呢其实没有那么好。你可以选择去自制一些发酵液，或者是有一些发酵的叫 molasses 这种东西，它是一个发酵的糖液，是用这个东西也可以，任何的发酵液都可以。
Thank you, Helen. Molasses, Molasses.
Yes. Let me find out how to get it translated.
That's okay. The pre-bought liquid is fine, but it only lasts for so long. Like the enzymes are only fresh for a limited amount of time, so you need to either keep buying more or making more.
Yeah. 他说像这种发酵液呢，它都会在一段时间内逐渐消退自己的作用，所以你需要持续的去买。那它有打出来这个东西叫 molasses， 您可以看一下呢 Helen Dent 为大家打出的那个词是前面那个 MOLASSES。
There's also a grain, the one that you bought from Bunnings, there's a grain that a bit like what I showed you earlier. It's probably a little bit more effective because it's dormant until you use it.
I'm very sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you explain that again?
Yes. So instead of the liquid, you can use that bokashi grain, the bag of grain that I held up. That lasts longer because it's dormant until you put it in your compost.
It's dormant.
Yeah, so it's like it's inactive until you add it to your compost, and then it comes to life.
Yep.
Yeah.
或者呢，您可以买他之前给您展示过的一袋用浴的那个，是用来 bokashi 用的一个植物。那个东西的效果呢，是只有当您把它打开之后，放到里面之后，它才开始生效，所以它之前呢不会失去它的效果。And the next question is still from Flora. Flora is asking, can this liquid replace the worms?
The liquid is for use in a bokashi system with no oxygen, so a sealed bucket, not a worm farm.
那么您的那个液体呢，是用在 bokashi 的系统里面，是一个厌氧的环境。那么它不是用在蠕虫工厂里面的。
So they work differently.
所以呢，它们的使用方法是不同的。
Worms will eat the food and turn it into the brown soil. The bokashi spray will ferment the food scraps, but then they need to be buried.
那么对于蠕虫工厂来讲，它是通过蠕虫去吃掉这些食物残渣，然后去产生这种棕色的土壤。那么对于最后一个那个发酵桶来讲，那这个 bokashi 桶它是通过微生菌去进行发酵，使土壤充满养分。
Any other questions?
We have answered all of the questions that have been asked. Yeah, there's one more question. So for the worms, do I need to keep buying it, or do I just buy it once and they'll just grow themselves?
Yes. Buy them once and they will, every 3 months, their population will double. As long as you keep them alive and happy and healthy.
他说买一次就可以了，然后它自己会生长，每3个月呢，它的数量就会增长1倍，只要你给它一个比较好的生长环境。
Any other questions?
大家还有其他问题吗？
Well, if there's no more questions, I will put together a fact sheet. Oh, there might be one more question come through, but I will put together a fact sheet to answer that other question. And I'll use sort of a lot of pictures. I'll keep it really clear and simple so that we can send that out with the presentation.
Yep. 那我们这边还有一个信息册会发给大家，然后大家可以跟今天的这个信息会一起去使用。So the next question we've got is, could you show us where can we could you show us where, sorry, I think there's a typo there, so I'm not able to understand that. So Flora, 你可以再打一下吗？有没有看懂？在哪里买？希望再展示下。Okay. So could you show us again where can we get the worms?
Yes. So you can buy the worms from Bunnings, from myself, from your local garden centre, maybe even Mitre 10. If you Google compost worms near me on the internet, you will find your nearest.
他说你可以去当地的 Bunnings 买，也可以通过它来买，也可以在你当地的花园来买，或者你可以在 Google 上面搜索里面输入 compost worms near me， 就这样，就是说离我比较近的发酵蠕虫就可以。And the next question is from Helen. Can you any worms then?
Excellent question. Worms have an amazing ability to self-regulate their population. So once they've reached full capacity for their environment and the food available, they will stop breeding.
Yep.
Very clever.
这是一个很好的问题，不会的，因为呢，那所有的蠕虫它会去生长，它需要获取养分和足够的食物。那么当它生长到一定程度，它的氧气和养分已经达到了上限了，它达到消耗的上限之后，它就不会再变多了。Next question is that what is the English name of compost worms? So that should be compost worms. I can type it in the chat section. Compost worms. The next question. How can we find you? How can we get in contact with you?
With me? There is a Facebook group you can join to ask questions. There's a Facebook page. I'll just write in the chat. So Compost Community is me, and you can chat with us anytime. or visit the website, and there's everything can be translated on the website. So Facebook.
那么他们是有一个 Facebook 的小组和 Facebook 的页面，现在呢，那他会在旁边的聊天栏给大家打出来，大家可以去 Facebook 上面搜索一下。还有就是他们还有一个网站，然后那个网站上面所有的东西您都可以使用 Google 翻译成中文。
Sorry, I made a spelling mistake.
不好意思，这边打字的时候有打错的地方。
We might put together an email with resources to send out in the next week.
That's a good idea.
And we got another question. For the fertilizer, how long do we need to fermentate them for?
Yes, 2 weeks in the bucket. So your food waste will spend 2 weeks in the bucket, then dig it into the ground, and then wait 2 more weeks, and then plant your veggies or flowers.
他说2周，你可以把食物的残渣放到这里面2周，过2周之后可以把土壤放到花园里面，再过2周就可以种水果蔬菜了。
I should mention too, I believe council might have a sustainability Facebook page. Is that correct, Regina?
Yes.
If you can pop that in the chat, that might be a useful one.
Yeah. So I'm just conscious of the time as well. So we do have a Sustainable Living in Whitehorse Facebook page, and we also have an e-newsletter, which I can send in the email.
他说：“那我们这边时间差不多要结束了。那市委会这边还会提供可持续发展的相关的信息和网站，还有一封电子的一个定期的通信，都会发给大家的电子邮箱。”
Thank you. I'd first of all like to say thank you very much for our fantastic presenter Ella and to our interpreter Philip.
跟着 Ella， 然后以及还有翻译。
I'm sure we've all learnt a lot. Excuse me for my voice. Please keep an eye out for the email we'll send out. It'll have all the resources in there that you've learnt today, including our website, fact sheets, further information.
那我相信呢，今天大家都学到了非常多的东西。那么之后呢，我们会通过电子邮件把所有详细的纸质版的信息都发给大家，还有里面也会包括我们的网站。
Please feel free to flick through any questions via email as well, and we'll try our best to answer them too. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today.
那所有您如果之后还有任何问题的话，请您去发送电子邮件，那么去询问我们，我们会尽可能的去为您回答。非常感谢大家今天来参加我们这样一个信息会。
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.